I'm Christina Onnested. Former President Donald Trump spent 20 minutes in a Fulton County jail Thursday where he was booked on 13 felonies, including racketeering charges for alleged attempts to subvert the will of Georgia voters and overturn Joe Biden's 2020 presidential win in the state. He was then released on a $200,000 bond. Trump's mugshot was taken, a first for a former U.S. president. His sullen, angered scowl is now Trump's profile image as he returns to the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. Speaking on the tarmac to catch a flight on his way home, Trump repeated claims of innocence and election interference.
What has taken place here is a travesty of justice. We did nothing wrong. I did nothing wrong. What they're doing is election interference. They're trying to interfere with an election. There's never been anything like it in our country before. This is their way of campaigning. And this is one instance, but you have three other instances. It's election interference.
He faces 4 separate indictments totaling 91 charges against him related to hush money payments to an adult film star, his handling of classified U.S. government documents, and 2 related to alleged efforts to subvert the will of voters and overturn his 2020 presidential election loss. This as Trump continues to campaign for the Republican presidential nominee. Meanwhile, House Republicans continued to pursue President Joe Biden's impeachment. Edwin Vieira reports.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy has indicated impeachment proceedings against President Joe Biden could move forward when Congress returns to session next month. Formal articles of impeachment were filed against Biden by Florida Republican Representative Gary Stube earlier this month. While Senate Republicans are worried about how this could play out, Cedric Richmond with the Democratic National Committee says instead of Biden, McCarthy is the one who should be worried.
McCarthy wakes up every day praying he still has 218 votes to be Speaker of the House. I've been there and I know it. Depending on what he says today, it may change tomorrow, depending on where a handful of Republicans decide that they want to drag him around.
I'm Edwin J. Vieira for Pacifica Network and Public News Service.
Russia's president has confirmed the death of Wagner mercenary chief Yevgeny Prigozhin. Vladimir Putin's comments were translated by Al Jazeera.
I knew Prigozhin for a very long time, from the beginning of the 90s. He was a man of difficult fate and mistakes. He had serious things in life, and he achieved the results he needed for himself. And when I asked him about it for a common cause, as in these last months, he was a talented person, a talented businessman. He worked not only in our country and worked with results, but also abroad, in Africa in particular. He was engaged in oil, gas, precious metals, and stones there. As far as I know, he returned from Africa and met some officials here.
The announcement comes amid speculation Prigozhin's death in a plane crash was an assassination after his failed mutiny months ago. But Putin's spokesperson Dmitry Peskov today rejected allegations the Kremlin was behind the plane crash. Meanwhile, the Associated Press is reporting a preliminary U.S. intelligence assessment says the plane was downed by an internal explosion, citing anonymous sources. The assessment also says Prigozhin was likely targeted, and the explosion falls in line with Putin's long history of trying to silence his critics. A Defense Department spokesperson declined to say publicly if the U.S. considers Prigozhin's death an assassination yesterday. Maui County has sued Hawaiian Electric Company over the fires that devastated Lahaina, saying the utility negligently failed to shut off power despite exceptionally high winds and dry conditions. Witness accounts and video indicate sparks from power lines ignited fires as utility poles snapped in the winds, which were driven by a passing hurricane. The fire killed at least 115 people. A Hawaiian Electric statement said they're disappointed in the litigation. Meanwhile, Maui County has released the names of 388 people still missing as searchers continue to look for remains in the wake of the deadliest U.S. wildfire in more than a century. Officials urged people to come forward if they know anyone on the list is safe. More than 1,700 people reported missing have been found as of Thursday afternoon. In the U.S., a heat wave continues. Warnings have increased to 24 states, impacting more than 100 million people, mostly in the Midwest to the Gulf Coast. The relief is forecast by this weekend with cooler temperatures. Meanwhile, excessive heat advisories are in effect for California's deserts and Arizona today. In the Great Lakes, a strong storm in Michigan, powered by winds of up to 75 miles per hour, downed trees, tore roofs off buildings, left hundreds of thousands without power, and delayed flights in Detroit. It also killed 3 people, a woman and 2 young children who hydroplaned while driving last night. Heavy rains have also impacted Ohio, flooding roadways, forcing rescues from cars, and flooding Las Vegas as well. President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris will observe Monday's 60th anniversary of the March on Washington by meeting with organizers of the 1963 gathering and relatives of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Meanwhile, civil rights groups will mark the day with a March on Washington Saturday. I'm Christina Onnested, reporting for Pacifica Radio.